Hello everyone, Dr. Michael Llamas here for Teaching Subjects, and today we will look at one of the most practical aspects of the English language, which are phrasal verbs. Now, phrasal verbs are an essential part of everyday English. They can seem tricky at first glance. After all, who would think that combining two simple words like run and into could mean to meet someone by chance? Yet these little combinations are the building blocks of natural conversational English. They allow us to express ideas with nuance, clarity, and confidence, whether we are chatting with a friend, giving directions, or even writing an email. Throughout this presentation, I'll walk you through 10 of the most common and useful phrasal verbs. So together we'll break them down into simple, manageable parts. You'll learn what they mean, how to use them correctly, and even some tips to help you remember them effortlessly. So by the end, you'll feel confident incorporating these phrases into your own conversations, making your English sound far more natural. Okay, so before we jump into the details, let's take a moment to answer a question that many of you might have on your mind. And that is, what exactly are phrasal verbs? Now, phrasal verbs are a unique feature of the English language that combine a verb with a preposition, an adverb, or both. So for example, when you hear phrases like pick up, or run into, or give up, those are phrasal verbs in action. Individually, the words may seem simple, but together they often create entirely new meanings. For example, pick just means to choose or grab, but pick up could mean to lift something, learn something new, or collect someone in a car. It's amazing, isn't it? Now, why should you care about phrasal verbs? So the answer is simple. They are essential for everyday communication. These verbs are everywhere in spoken English, from casual conversations with friends to professional discussions at work. Now, native speakers rely on them because they're natural, concise, and expressive. So without them, even the most grammatically correct sentences can sound a bit stiff or overly formal. Mastering phrasal verbs gives you the tools to sound fluent, authentic, and relatable when you speak. So for example, think about the difference between saying, I ended our relationship and I broke up with him. Both express the same idea, but the second example with the phrasal verb broke up is how people naturally speak in day-to-day English. It's more conversational and instantly connects you to the rhythm of the language. Now that we understand what phrasal verbs are and why they are important, let me give you a quick preview of the 10 key phrases we'll focus on this lesson today. Each one is carefully chosen for its usefulness and frequency in everyday conversation. So here's a sneak peek. We're going to use get along or get along with, and that means to have a friendly or harmonious relationship with somebody. We're going to use look after, and that means to take care of someone or something. Come up or come up with, to think of an idea or solution. Turn up, to arrive or appear unexpectedly. Run out of, to have no more of something left. Get over, to recover from something like an illness or a difficult situation. Pick up, to collect someone's something or learn something new. Take off, to remove something or for a plane to leave the ground. Break down, to stop working or become upset. And then give up, to stop doing something or trying. Don't worry if any of these feel unfamiliar right now. We'll break each one down carefully, explore its different meanings, and practice putting them into real-life context. My goal is to make these phrases intuitive and easy to use. So by the end of this lesson, you'll not only understand these verbs, but also feel confident and excited to use them in your everyday communication. Trust me, you will be amazed at how much these simple yet dynamic phrases can transform the way you speak and write in English. Now, with that overview in mind, let's get started. Okay, so the first one that we're going to look at is get along with. Okay, this is a phrase that is both simple and incredibly useful, especially when you want to talk about relationships. Get along with means to have a friendly or harmonious relationship with somebody. It's the kind of phrase you'll use when talking about personal connections, social life, or even your dynamics with colleagues at work. So for example, if I say she gets along with her neighbors, what I'm really saying is that she has a good, friendly relationship with them. Another example could be, do you get along with your boss? It's a useful question to ask when discussing workplace dynamics. Notice how natural and conversational the phrasing sounds. Now, as simple as this phrase may seem, there are some common errors learners tend to make when using it. So a frequent mistake is confusing get along with get together. Okay, although they might seem related, they mean entirely different things. While get along refers to a relationship or how well people interact, get together refers to spending time with someone or meeting them socially. So, for example, I get along with my coworkers means you have a good relationships with them. But I get together with my coworkers means you meet them, okay, perhaps for a coffee or a gathering. So mixing these up can lead to some misunderstandings, so it's essential to know the distinction between them. To avoid this error, here's a simple tip. Whenever you want to use get along, think about relationships. Does this sentence you're building talk about how people feel about each other or how they interact? If the answer is yes, get along is the right choice. It might also help to create practice sentences about people that you know. So, for example, I get along with my siblings, or Mark and Lisa don't get along very well. So, practicing in this way will make it much easier for you to internalize the meaning and use it correctly. So, to wrap up, just remember get along with is all about harmony in relationships. It's a valuable phrase that will help you connect with others and express yourself clearly in English. So practice using it in your everyday conversations and soon you'll find it starts becoming second nature. So our next phrasal verb is one that's both practical and straightforward. Okay, look after. This is a phrase you'll often hear when talking about responsibilities or care for someone or something. It's a fundamental part of everyday communication as we all have moments where we are responsible for others or certain tasks. Look after means simply to take care of someone or something. So whether it's a person, an animal, or an object, this phrasal verb highlights a sense of responsibility. It's commonly used in both personal and professional settings, so it's incredibly versatile. Here are some examples to help you see it in action. Okay, so the first one that we have is he looks after his younger brother. This means he takes care of his brother, ensuring he's safe and well. Okay, another example is can you look after my plants? A perfect request to make when you need someone to water your plants while you are away. So notice how in both examples, look after clearly conveys the idea of care and responsibility. A common area of confusion is mixing up look after with phrases like look at or look for. Now, these are other verb combinations means something entirely different. So look at is simply about directing your eyes towards something like look at this beautiful painting. Meanwhile, look for is used when searching for something as in I'm looking for my keys. So if you accidentally say I need someone to look at my dog while I'm on vacation, it could sound like you simply want someone to stare at your dog, not quite the intended message that you're trying to convey. Okay, so how to avoid this? So, to avoid this confusion, here's a helpful tip. Always think about the context of care or responsibility. If your sentence involves caring for or being in charge of someone or something, look after is the correct choice. You can also practice by creating scenarios in your mind where you might want to use it. So, for example, think of who do I look after during my daily life? Or what are some tasks where I'm responsible for caring? Okay, so practicing with real life situations can make the meaning of look after stick more naturally. So to summarize this one, look after is all about responsibility and care. It's a wonderful practical phrase that you can use in so many everyday situations, from describing how you help a friend to sharing how you care for your own belongings. So now that we're looking after our understanding of this phrasal verb, we should keep going. Okay, so now let's move on to our next phrasal verb, and this is come up with. Now, this is an incredibly dynamic and versatile phrase, especially useful when you're discussing ideas, solution, or creative thinking. Now, come up with means to think of an idea, plan, or solution. Okay, it's all about using your creativity or problem solving skills to generate something new. So, think of it as the moment when a light bulb goes off in your head, right? So, yes, that come up with in action. Okay, so let's look at some examples to illustrate this. So, the first sentence, she came up with a great marketing idea. This means she thought of a brilliant concept to use in marketing efforts. Another example could be, can you come up with a better strategy, right? A common question when brainstorming or refining a plan. So notice how in both examples, come up with emphasizes the process of coming to a new idea or approach. Now, there's a common misconception that can trip up learners, okay? Some people misinterpret come up with as physically bringing something to someone, which is incorrect, okay? So, for example, If you're planning a meeting, it wouldn't make sense to say, please come up with the documents to the meeting. Instead, come up with is only used for instances where you are generating or thinking of ideas, not delivering something that is tangible. Okay, so then how do we avoid this kind of mix up? So here's a practical tip. Always associate come up with mental effort, creativity, or problem solving. If the sentence involves thinking or creating, you've got the right context. So, for example, if someone asks, what can we do about this issue? You might respond with, I'll try to come up with a solution. Okay, so try imagining different situations where problem solving or brainstorming is needed and practice building sentences within that kind of framework. So, to sum up, come up with, this is your go-to phrase for expressing moments of creativity, innovation, or finding solutions. So mastering this phrasal verb will enhance your ability to communicate clearly and naturally, especially in discussions that involve generating new ideas. Okay, so now we have a turn up, and this is another versatile and commonly used phrase that often comes in handy when you are talking about arrivals or unexpected appearances. Okay, so turn up with means to arrive or appear unexpectedly. It captures that element of surprise or unpredictability. Okay, so whether it's someone showing up at a party or an object being found in the last place that you'd expect. Now, this phrase is not only practical, but it also adds a natural conversational tone to your English. So here's how it works in real life situations. Okay, so for instance, in the sentence, he turned up late for the party. This means he arrived at the party but not on time. Okay, and then another example is, my keys always turn up in strange places. This implies that the keys reappear but often in unexpected spots. So, can you think of a time when something or someone turned up unexpectedly in your life? It's quite a relatable scenario, isn't it? Now, as you might guess, turn up can sometimes be confused with turn on. While turn up refers to an arrival or appearance, turn on is all about activating a device, right? Like, please turn on the lights. So mixing these two up can lead to funny or confusing situations, right? Imagine saying he turned on at the party instead of saying he turned up at the party. It changes the whole meaning. So how to avoid this? So here's a simple tip. Associate turn up exclusively with people or things making an entrance or being found. Whenever you hear or use the phrase, think about arrival or discovery, okay? You can make this easier to remember by practicing sentences about events or searches. So for example, the missing file turned up on my desk this morning, or I hope she turns up for the meeting on time. So to wrap up, turn up is all about unexpected arrivals or reappearances. It's a fantastic phrase to enrich your vocabulary and make your descriptions feel more natural. So the more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to start feeling to use this kind of phrase in your daily conversations. So now let's look at the phrasal verb run out of, right? So this is a phrase you'll often hear when talking about resources or supplies that are completely used up. It's a simple yet essential expression, especially in situations where something important is no longer available. So run out of means to have no more of something left. It's used to describe when supplies, ideas, or even energy are depleted. So this phrasal verb is incredibly practical for both personal and professional communication. Okay, so to help solidify this, here are some examples. First, we ran out of paper in the printer. This sentence shows that there is no more paper left to use. Another common usage is I've run out of ideas. This could happen in a brainstorming session when creativity feels completely drained. So notice how straightforward this phrasal verb is when it identifies a lack of something. Now, one common error people make while using run out of is forgetting the word of, which is an essential part of the phrase. So for example, saying we ran out paper would sound incomplete and incorrect. So without of, the sentence does not indicate what resource has been exhausted. Similarly, it's important to remember that run out of always connects with a resource. It's not interchangeable with run out the door or other uses, right? So those carry a completely different meaning. So here's a tip to avoid these kinds of errors. Remind yourself that run out is only complete when it includes of and a tangible or intangible resource. So one way is to think about it as a trio. It's you, the resource, and the connector of. So whenever you use or hear this phrase, make sure it answers the question, what did you run out of? Okay. Additionally, practice creating sentences where a specific resource runs out. So for example, energy, ideas, food, or even time. Okay, so to summarize, run out of is all about identifying when something is completely used up or no longer available. So by practicing with real life scenarios, you'll find it easy and natural to use in your everyday conversations. Okay, so now let's explore get over. Okay, this one's really good for everyday conversations, particularly when talking about recovering or overcoming challenges. So, get over has two primary meanings. The first one is it refers to recovering from something emotionally or physically. For example, getting over an illness or an emotional setback like a breakup. Then the second meaning is it means to overcome or deal with a difficult situation, such as conquering a fear or coping with a major disappointment. So, to put this into perspective, let's look at some examples. For the first one, which is the emotional recovery, you have a sentence like, she's trying to get over her breakup, or it took him months to get over the loss of his pet. Okay, but for overcoming challenges, we can use sentences like, he managed to get over his fear of public speaking, or it's hard to get over a major disappointment, but it is possible. So notice how in each example, get over involves progress or moving forward. Okay, so now that we know what it means and review some examples, let's discuss some common errors when using get over. So the first mistake is confusing it with go over. So for example, saying I need to get over this report before submitting it, right? This is incorrect. The right phrase is I need to go over this report. That means like they're trying to review it. And then another error is taking it literally when it isn't intended that way. So for example, get over the fence refers to physically crossing something and shouldn't be confused with emotional recovery. How do we avoid these errors? So to avoid these mistakes, there's two things that you should remember. The first is that context is key. If you're talking about recovery, think of emotional or physical healing or overcoming challenges. The second, differentiate get over from other similar phrases like go over or jump over. Use physical terms like climb or cross when discussing literal actions. So, understanding the context and practicing with real life scenarios will help you master the use of get over in no time. Okay, so then for this one, we have two different phrasal verbs. We have pick up and take off. Now, both are commonly used, yet they're kind of misunderstood. So let's ensure that we understand what they mean. Okay, so for the first one we're going to discuss is pick up. Now, this phrasal verb has two primary meanings. The first meaning is to collect someone or something, and the second is to learn or acquire something new, often informally. So, for example, I'll pick you up at 7 p.m. It clearly indicates that you are collecting someone, perhaps in a car. Okay, on the other hand, we have he picked up French quickly, means that he learned the language informally or effortlessly. It's amazing, isn't it? Such a flexible phrase. So, but here's the trap, okay? So many learners confuse pick up with lift, thinking it only applies to physically rising something. While this is one possible meaning, pick up also has a broader application. So for instance, when you say I picked up a book at the store, you mean you collected it, bought it, not physically lifted it. So to avoid this error, think of pick up in terms of its context, right? Either collecting like people, objects, or items, or learning like skills or habits. Now, practice by creating sentences about transportation or new hobbies, such as can you pick up some groceries on the way home? Or I've picked up a new hobby, which is painting. Okay, so now let's look at takeoff. So like pick up, this one has two core meanings. The first one is for a plane to leave the ground, and the second meaning is to remove something like clothing. Let's look at some examples of this in action, right? So the plane took off at 6 a.m. Okay, so this describes a literal departure of an aircraft, and another sentence is she took off her jacket, which means she removed it. Now, these are straightforward and they're used in everyday language. However, here comes the confusion. Some learners overuse take off in contexts where it doesn't fit. It's common to hear things like, he took off the light, which is incorrect. Instead, you would say, he turned off the light. Okay. This highlights why associating take off with clothes or planes is important to using it correctly. So here's a tip to prevent such mistakes. Whenever you use take off, ask yourself, am I talking about flying or removing something? If the answer is no, then it might not be the right phrase to use in that scenario. You can think of other examples where these scenarios apply, like, her business really took off last year, which uses the phrase metaphorically to mean it becomes successful, right? Or I always take off my shoes before entering the house, which sticks to the literal meaning. So both pick up and take off are practical and versatile phrases to use. So to fully master them and know them, just practice using them in their appropriate context, whether that involves collecting your friends, learning a new language, boarding a flight, or even removing a scarf. So over time, these phrases will start to feel completely natural to you once you start practicing them. So now in this slide, let's talk about break down and give up. Both of these are incredibly common and carry meanings that are deeply tied to emotions, efforts, and even mechanics. Okay, so understanding these phrases will help you express complex ideas with clarity and ease. So first, let's start with breakdown. So this phrasal verb also has two main uses. The first one is to stop working, especially for machines and vehicles. And the second meaning is to become overwhelmed emotionally, often leading to tears or intense feelings. So for example, you might say the car broke down on the highway, which clearly refers to a mechanical failure. Or consider this emotional context, right? She broke down after hearing the news. Here it means she became so upset that she couldn't hold back her emotions. So both uses are relatable and frequently encountered in real life situations. However, a common pitfall is confusing breakdown with physically damaging or breaking something into pieces. So for example, he broke down the door is not the same as the phrasal verb breakdown. So in order to avoid this mistake, always check the context. Does it involve a loss of function, which is mechanical or emotional? If yes, then you're likely using breakdown correctly. So here's a tip to solidify this distinction. Connect a breakdown with failure, either of a machine or emotional resilience. And you can use scenarios where something stops working or someone expresses an emotional low. Sentences like, my laptop broke down right before the deadline, or I broke down after watching that touching movie, right? This will help you practice these types of contexts. Okay, so now let's talk about give up. Now, this phrasal verb means to stop doing something or trying. It's commonly used in situations where perseverance ends, whether it's a good habit, a bad one, or an effort that's proving to be too difficult. So here's how it works. When someone says, don't give up on your dreams, they're encouraging perseverance. On the other hand, he gave up smoking last year. This refers to someone quitting a habit, hopefully for the better. Now, the confusion with give up often lies in its interpretation as physically handing something over. So, for instance, he gave up his seat on the bus is correct, but it doesn't carry the same meaning as he gave up trying to learn the piano. Okay, so to avoid this error, remember that give up in this sense where learning today is all about effort or quitting. It's not about physically giving a possession to someone else. So here's a practical tip whenever you hear or use give up. Ask yourself, is this about stopping an action or an effort? If yes, you're using it correctly. Practice with examples in areas you care about, your hobbies, your dreams, or your future goals. So for instance, I'll never give up practicing English is a great way to stay inspired. So just to recap these two, breakdown is about mechanical failure or emotional overwhelm, right? While give up is about stopping an effort or action. So by associating these phrases with their distinct context, you'll start mastering them in no time. So now that we've learned the 10 phrasal verbs, let's put these into practice with these 5 fill in the blanks. So feel free to pause the video and try these on your own. Or if not, you can follow along with me. So for the first sentence, we have my car blank on the way to work and I had to call a mechanic. And here I give you a hint, which is mechanical failure, and we just kind of went over this one. So this one is my car broke down on the way to work and I had to call a mechanic. Good. Then we have the second sentence, I'll blank you blank at the station at 6 p.m., so be ready. And the hint here we have is transportation. So the answer to this one is, I'll pick you up at the station at 6 p.m., so be ready. Then for the third exercise, we have, she finally blank blank the flu after 2 weeks of rest. And the hint here is recovery. So for this one, we can say, she finally got over the flu after 2 weeks of rest. Good. Now for the fourth one, don't blank blank, you're so close to finishing the project. And here the hint is perseverance. So we can say, don't give up, you're so close to finishing the project. Good. And then for number 5, we have, he blank blank a brilliant idea during the meeting that solved the issue. Okay, the hint here is creativity. So we would say, he came up with a brilliant idea during the meeting that solved the issue. Okay, good job. Now, before we wrap up, let's just take a quick moment to review everything that we've covered, right? So here's a quick rundown of the phrasal verbs that we've explored. So the first one, get along with, means to have a friendly or harmonious relationship with someone. Look after means to take care of someone or something. Come up with is to think of an idea or solution. Turn up means to arrive or appear unexpectedly. Run out of means to have no more of something left. Get over means to recover from something like an illness or difficult situation. Pick up means to collect someone or something or learn something new. Take off means to remove something or for a plane to leave the ground. Break down means to stop working or become upset. And then we had give up, to stop doing something or trying. So do you see how versatile these verbs are? They pop up all the time in everyday conversations, from talking about emotions to making plans or describing events. So lastly, and this is pretty important, I really encourage you to incorporate these phrasal verbs in your everyday conversations. The best way to reinforce what you've learned is by using them actively. So whether you're chatting with friends, writing emails, or even thinking to yourself, try sprinkling these phrases into your communication. So for example, you could tell someone, I ran out of coffee this morning, or the project really took off last year. Remember, the goal isn't just to understand the words, it's to make them a part of your everyday language. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll start to become. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Feel free to leave any questions in the comment section down below. If you found this helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content because it really helps us. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching.